This is not just a show. This is a shift. A reset of how men think, how men heal, and how men lead. Before behavior, there is belief. Before legacy, there is mindset. And before change reaches generations, it must first reach the mind. This is bridging generations. We were raised on survival, not reflection. Taught strength, but not emotional protection. Passed down rules, never passed down tools. So we repeated cycles, thinking pain was the fuel. Different decades, same inner wars. Men grinding hard, but still unsure. We inherited limits, disguised as truth, and called them manhood, handed down to the youth. But growth don't start with doing more. It starts with thinking different than before. What if failure was feedback, not shame? What if growth was learned, not fate or name? We don't stay fixed in who we've been. We expand our mind and life begins. Belief is the seed, mindset the soil. Growth is the reward of intentional toil. This is bridging generations, voices of men, where the mind gets renewed and healing begins. We don't pass down fear, we pass down plans. Blueprints for growth, hand to hand. From presence to purpose, from pain to design. We build better futures with a growth mindset. They told us that's just how men are, but we questioned the ceiling, raised the bar. We learned growth is a discipline, not a phase. A daily decision in how we're raised. Old men teaching lessons from scars. They survive, young men bringing vision, asking why different perspectives, same destination. Healing the man heals the generation. The growth mindset blueprint gave language to pain. Turned I can into I can learn again. No longer stuck in past definitions. We design men with intention. Growth is intentional. Mindset is foundational. Healing is learned. Legacy is built. Presence over pride, process over ego, blueprints, not excuses. This is how men grow. This is bridging generations, no fixed identity. We evolve, adapt, grow intentionally. We don't repeat cycles, we redesign systems. From the mind to the home, to the way that we lead them. The same motivation, it's transformation. Voices aligned through growth across generations. Growth is not accidental. Mindset is the real inheritance. And when men grow, families heal, communities rise, generations change.
Good evening and welcome to Bridging Generations, Voices of Men in a Changing World. I am Dr. Laxley.
And I am Dr. Juan Marcel, your co-host for this awesome show. Doc,
Wow.
What's new? What's going on?
Man, so newness is everywhere. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
You know, newness is everywhere because we carry the old and we regenerate the new from the old, right?
Mm.
That's what we do. We don't stay stuck into where we are. We move forward because that is who we are. Yeah, so coming back from Kenya, it was something special, and it continues to be that something special. You know, I've been reflecting on the journey, the walk, and coming up with learning some new things about me, some very new things about me. And, you know, often we believe that we know what we need to know, but guess what? There's so much more we need to learn. You know, and I'm talking that stuff within us, not just learn that external stuff, things about us, right? So I'm learning a lot, and I'm going to dig in deeper and get back into that learning mode and stay there. What about you? How are you doing?
I'm good. We were just talking about just this readjustment back to the States Eastern Standard Time, you know, for almost 2.5 weeks, we were 7 hours ahead. So jet lag is a real thing, y'all. Jet lag is real. But I'm good, doing good. And just piggybacking on what you just said, about staying in that position of learning. I tell myself that all the time. I live by it, to stay in the seat of a student, forever a student, forever learning.
Yeah, forever learning. And yeah, forever learning. And encourage anyone who's joining us tonight, who's only watch the broadcast, the replay, get into that place
Yeah.
of learning.
Yeah.
That is a wonderful place to be. Wonderful place to be. We had a show yesterday. I interviewed you, and I tell you, that was something special. You
Yeah.
shared your life story.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say this. I remember the first time, I believe it was one of your first shows, and it was the first time I actually sat and just elaborated on my story, and I can tell you I was so uncomfortable telling my story. But yesterday, I've gotten so used to telling my story. It just felt like second nature. There was no issue with it at all. I felt so comfortable, and safe. That's what I want to say: safe and comfortable.
Yeah, and I will tell you this, your story is going to serve so many, impact so many, because it's a story that we're telling. It's quite
Yeah.
a story we're telling. And,
Yeah.
and I'm sure we'll do it again because your story, there's no end there. It will continue.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're about growth, and that is who you are. But anyway, let's move to why we're here tonight. Dr. Juan, tonight we are discussing a reality that affects more men than most people realize.
Mm-hmm.
That reality is loneliness.
Uh,
And not simply being alone, not merely having quiet moments, but the experience of carrying life, responsibility, pressure, disappointment, uncertainty, and expectations without feeling truly understood. I know you have lived there, you've been there. I have. You know, a man can be surrounded by people and still feel disconnected.
yeah.
He can have a family and still feel unseen. He can
Mhm.
have friends and still feel unknown. He can be successful and still feel isolated. In fact, many men spend years being needed but not known, valued for what they provide but rarely ask how they are doing,
Mm.
respected for their strength while privately struggling with burdens they never discuss. And because men are often taught to endure silently, loneliness becomes normalized. It becomes something they carry instead of something they confront. So tonight, we on Bridging Generations, Voices of Men, we want to challenge that because strength should never require isolation and leadership should never require loneliness. So, Dr. Juan, let's talk about it. Share your thoughts.
Well, thank you, Doc. As I'm listening to your words, I cannot help but think about how many men are actually carrying weight that no one can see. I think many of us have mastered the art of showing up while falling apart. We go to work, we lead teams, we provide for our families, we serve in churches, we answer the phone when everyone else needs us. Yet when the day is over and the noise settles, many men are left alone with questions, fears, disappointments, and struggles they have never permitted themselves to voice. They have never felt permitted to voice their concerns. And because somewhere along the way, I believe many of us have learned that being a man meant carrying the burden without becoming the burden. We've learned how to say I'm good. We've learned how to smile, how to perform, how to survive, but very few of us were taught how to be honest about what we were carrying. I think about the Aristotle. He said that man is by nature a social being.
Mhm.
So, in other words, we were never designed to do life completely alone. Yet We were created for relationship. We were created for connection, community, and belonging. Yet many men spend their lives trying to prove they don't need what they were actually designed to have. Psychology reinforces this reality. I think about, even when I was thinking about this today, I thought about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it teaches that after our basic physical and safety needs are met, one of our deepest human needs is love and belonging. Before significance, before status, before achievement, there's a need to know that we are connected, accepted, and valued. And what is interesting is that many men spend years chasing success while starving for connection. So the truth is that loneliness is not always the absence of people. I've learned that sometimes loneliness is feeling like nobody truly knows what you're battling. It's being strong, being the strong one when nowhere to be weak, being the provider who doesn't know who provides for him, or being the encourager who secretly needs encouragement. And I'll say this, my last thought to answer your question. I think about Genesis chapter 2, where it says, "It is not good that man should be alone." And most people, when they think about that, they hear that verse and they think about marriage. But before it was about a wife, I believe God was talking about, or God was observing humanity. And when God looked at man, he said, isolation is not good for this man. So if God understood something that many of us are still learning, people can survive alone, but they rarely thrive alone. So all of that to say that we all need healthy relationships, trusted voices, and we all need spaces where we can feel fully known and fully accepted.
Wow. You know, what you just said, I am reminded of you speaking in Kenya. And I recall the the gentleman the gentleman that went on after you said that was a message.
Mm.
And what you just delivered was a message. All right, so we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to pose the questions in the chat because I think that's important. So anyone
Yes,
watching can follow along. And the first question we're going to discuss tonight is, why do so many men feel lonely even when they are surrounded by people? You know, Dr. Juan, one of the greatest misconceptions about loneliness is that it is the absence of people. Right? And guess what? It is not. In fact, some of the loneliest men I know were surrounded by family, colleagues, church members, employees, and friends.
Yeah.
So I am suggesting that the issue is not about proximity, it's about connection.
Yes.
Because many men spend their lives being valued for what they do rather than understood for who they are. And I know you're going to have something to say about that. You know, people know the provider, they know the leader, they know the businessman, and they know the father. But very few people know the man beneath those roles. And I want you to imagine, think about a man carrying financial pressure, family expectations, career uncertainty, personal disappointment, and emotional exhaustion, while feeling like there is no one who can fully share it with them. That, Dr. One, is loneliness. Not because people are absent, but because understanding is absent. No one understands them. So I believe many men are suffering from what I call relational invisibility.
Ooh, wow.
They are unseen but not known, needed but not understood, present but disconnected. So, Doc, what is your perspective on why so many men feel lonely despite being surrounded by people?
Ooh, Doc, you said something. That relational invisibility. My goodness, that's a good way to put that. I think many men feel lonely because, and you touched on this, being surrounded by people is not the same as being known by people. A lot of people are connected, or a lot of men, I should say, are connected socially but disconnected emotionally. So people know what we do, but they don't always know what we were carrying. They know you said it best, the husband, they know the father, they know the professional, but they don't know the man that carries all of that. And many of us have been conditioned to be strong, to be problem solvers, but at the same time, and carrying all of that weight and fulfilling all of those roles, we've been taught to keep it moving. But when you never share the weight you're carrying, loneliness can grow even in a crowded room. I believe, me and my scripture references, I thought about Ecclesiastes. It says this: two are better than one. So I believe that God never intended for us to do life alone. I believe we all need people who know us beyond our titles and responsibilities. And at the end of the day, most men aren't looking for more attention. I think they're looking for genuine connections, understanding, and a safe place to be honest. That's what I believe.
I believe you're on point. You're so correct. You know, let's. I posted questions in the caption in the chat for our listeners, and the first one is, who truly knows what you're carrying right now? And that's something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you connected to people or merely surrounded by them? Because often you find yourself in a situation where you have a crowd around you, but there's no connection. And if your responsibilities disappeared tomorrow, who would still know the real you? I want you to respond to that one.
That's a good question. I think, and you got me thinking just with them questions, and if it disappeared, who would know the real me? And I think honestly, it would be those who are in my inner circle, right? Those who I not necessarily talk to every day, but just know intimately. And there are quite a few people who I do believe would know. If all of that disappeared, they would know.
Mhm.
You know.
And it's good. You're blessed to have people in your circle that would know. Because I would suggest that there are many out there who with a different experience, right?
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
let's move to our second topic for tonight: suffering in silence. And give me a minute to post it in the chat because I think it's important. And the question is, why are men often reluctant to admit they're lonely? And that's a big one.
Mm.
Why are men often reluctant to admit they're lonely?
Mm.
As men, we really don't like to admit
No.
things, do we? You know, and my personal belief is that too many of us fear what honesty might cost.
Hmm.
And that's because from an early age, we're taught that strength means self-sufficiency.
Hmm.
Therefore, you must handle it. You must figure it out. And don't ever complain. Just keep moving, right? So, of course, those type of lessons can build resilience, but they can also build isolation,
Yeah.
right? They can also build isolation. So, too many of us become experts at managing appearances, how we show up. You know, there's such a thing as smiling while struggling,
Yeah.
lead while hurting, and encourage others while privately discouraged. And that's a big one. How do you encourage other people while you yourself is hurting?
Ooh.
So eventually, too many of us begin believing that values or true values comes from being needed rather than being known.
Hmm.
We put ourselves out there like that to be needed, to be wanted, right? To be seen, and
Yeah.
and understanding that there's more to it. And I believe that is something dangerous, right? So when vulnerability feels unsafe, right? When it feels unsafe to be vulnerable, then that's when loneliness becomes permanent. It becomes a permanent thing in your life, right? And that is a burden, when we refuse to share, becomes a burden that shapes who we become. So again, Doc, I want you to jump in on this, and the question for you is, why do you think so many men struggle to acknowledge loneliness openly? And the key thing is openly.
Openly. I think many men are reluctant to admit that they're lonely because loneliness feels too close to what you reference, vulnerability. And vulnerability is something many of us were never taught to embrace. Listening to you, I think about how we were taught, I know me specifically, we're taught performative measures, right? Performative behaviors, but not knowing how to show up and have a genuine presence. But we learn to perform. So from a young age, many men hear messages like "man up," "be strong," "handle it," or "figure it out." So we learn to hide struggles instead of expressing them. The challenge is that loneliness can feel like an admission that something is missing. And I think that's a big thing. That if I say that I'm lonely, then I'm missing something.
Mhm.
And I think many men fear being perceived as weak, needy, or incapable. I was reading today and I found this quote by psychologist Brown. It says that vulnerability is not weakness, it's our greatest measure of courage. I think that's especially true for men. Even when we think about what I referenced before, that it's not good for man to be alone, I want to say it again that if God recognized the need for connection, then admitting that need isn't weakness, it's just showing our humanity. So I believe the reality is that many men aren't suffering because they don't have people around them. I think they're suffering because they don't feel safe enough to tell the truth about what they're carrying.
Yeah.
And until we what's the word until we normalize these type of conversations, too many men will continue to suffer in silence.
You know, Elizabeth, she's joined us from Kenya. And she said that many men are reluctant to admit they're lonely because society often teaches them that vulnerability is weakness.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's a big one. Let's post in the chat for have some questions here, and we want to talk about these a little bit. All right, so for our listeners, if you're watching, here's some questions we want you to think about. What burden are you carrying alone?
Mm.
Have you confused silence with strength? What conversation have you been avoiding? All right, so let's move to the next one. And the cost of loneliness. What are the consequences of prolonged loneliness for men? And I want to post that in there as well, because I think this is a very important question.
Prolonged loneliness. Wow.
Mhm. All right, so I want to submit that loneliness changes more than emotions. It changes perspectives. It also changes relationships, right? So,
Mm.
and leadership been so important for us and for men. It changes leadership as well because many men become emotionally unavailable without realizing it. Too many of us tend to withdraw. Too many of us become angry, and some of us bury ourselves in work. Others seek unhealthy distractions.
Mm. Yeah.
Personally, I have seen marriages suffer because husbands didn't know how to communicate
Yeah.
what they're carrying. I have also seen fathers become emotionally distant because they believe they had to carry everything alone. I have seen leaders lose passion because they lack support. So loneliness never stay in an isolated place. Eventually it spills into every area of our life.
Hmm.
So Doc, what have you observed regarding the long-term impact of loneliness on men?
Um, I think much like you said, very rarely does it stay isolated. I do agree with that. And I think because it doesn't stay isolated, to your point, it does flow over into every other aspect of a man's life. I think even emotionally, motivation, and their performance, and spiritually, I think it can create a sense of disconnection and make a man feel as if he's carrying the weight of the world alone. And so, what concerns me when thinking about this topic, um, that most of that loneliness can become normalized. You know, we talked about, well, I mentioned normalizing conversations like this, but we're living in a time currently that this state of mind, this state of being, is normalized. A man can get so accustomed to carrying everything alone that I think he no longer reaches out. We talked about, you know, being vulnerable and being open about it, but I think he just stops reaching out and no longer asks for help, no longer believes that things could be different. So I think that's when loneliness stops being a season and starts to become a lifestyle. And no man, again, no man, I believe that no man was designed to live that way,
Mm.
in loneliness, alone.
And you said it earlier, and you made a very valid point. But let's share some questions for reflection for our listeners. How has loneliness affected your relationships? Have you become more isolated over time? Are there warning signs you're ignoring? And I want you to comment on that, the last one. Are there warning signs you're ignoring?
Yeah, I to for that question, I think that, well, personally, yes. I think the signs often, and I touched on this, I just thinking emotionally, spiritually, relationally, even professionally, that there are like signs within those areas of my life where I could see it setting in, right?
Mhm.
And you start to notice withdrawals, but to you it seems differently. You feel you pulling back because no one sees you, no one understands you, no one gets you. I mean, it's by myself anyway, so I might as well just keep to myself because I'm not going to sit here and talk to them. They don't want to hear it, you know. And so you think that you're making a decision to protect yourself when you're really pulling away, you're withdrawing. And so I do think that there are signs in your life, in my life, that you can ignore and see it as one thing when it's really not.
Mm. What if loneliness is becomes even more complicated when responsibility enters the picture? Do you believe that the more responsibility some men have, the lonelier they become?
Mm, yes. I think the greater the responsibility, the greater the potential for loneliness if you're not aware and if you're not intentional. Yeah,
Mm.
I think so.
So let's talk a little bit about the loneliness of responsibility. And the question is, does leadership and responsibility make loneliness more common for men? And I believe it does. I believe so. I believe the greater the responsibility, the greater the temptation to carry everything alone.
Hmm.
Yeah. And why? Because leaders are expected to have answers.
Hmm.
There's an expectation, right? You know, you're a father, you're expected to provide stability.
Yes.
There are these expectations, right? And especially if you're a business owner, you're expected to remain confident. And here's one for you, Doc, because you're a pastor. You're
Hmm.
expected to remain strong. I
Yeah.
remember when you was sharing your story yesterday, and at a time when you was really challenged.
Yeah.
You know, when you was taking on the role in the church and so forth, and everyone expected you to be a certain way, and something happened, right? That
Yeah.
shifted everything for you.
Yes.
So basically, over time, many men begin believing they cannot afford to be vulnerable because you're expected to be strong, to be confident, to provide stability. And from the way we understand vulnerability, is taken away from all of that. It's not
Yeah.
supporting those things, right?
Yeah.
So, but again, leadership should never, in my opinion, require isolation. I believe and I know for a fact that the strongest leaders are supported leaders, are leaders with people around them. So many men, regrettably, they're carrying burdens nobody sees. And being needed by everyone can sometimes leave a man feeling known by no one. And
Ooh.
that's a very strange thing, right? That's an interesting thing. Because if you're needed by everyone, you would think that your presence would be out there
Yeah.
all the time. So, Doc, can you share what have you learned about the relationship between responsibility and loneliness? Can you share that with us?
Yes. I think because many men are carrying the weight of leadership, and it's seen, or like you said, the responsibility is received at work, at home, in ministry, and even in their communities. I think people, and you said this well, people have placed the pressure of being the one with the answers, being the one that provides guidance, being the one that has the solutions, or the one that should be supporting what everybody else has going on. I think there be very few people um, that understand all that which a man in leadership is carrying. I think leadership creates that illusion that you always have to be strong, you always have to know the answer, and that you always have to hold it together. And I think that's the pressure to be.
Yeah, we seem to be having some technical difficulties here. Dr. Juan, you back? We lost you for a minute there.
You're expected to be. I hope have some technical difficulties. Um, but the reality is, leaders are. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you now. Mhm.
Oh, I'm back. Oh, yeah. See that the internet. I'm back. Is it clear though? Can you hear me clear?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear
Yeah,
you.
but yeah, I was just simply saying that the reality that we have to come to is that leaders are human too. Um, I found that the greatest dangers for men in leadership is believing that because people depend on you, you can't be honest about your own struggles. And I think that mentality is a dangerous place to live. And I think it causes the isolation. But I think the strongest leaders aren't the ones who carry everything alone. I think they're the ones who have trusted people around them who help them carry the weight. I think that's the most important part.
But from you're a pastor. So let's talk about that leadership role, that position that you play as a pastor. Is there extra pressure there?
Oh yes, I think for any pastor, shepherd, spiritual leader, that there's this erroneous assumption that you got it all together,
Mm,
that you walk the straight path, the straight and narrow, that you are perfect and without flaws, and so it comes with a lot of responsibility. Of course, that there is a way that I do believe that the Lord expects us to govern ourselves. But I think, of course, the Lord is much more forgiving than the world is and the church is.
mhm.
And so they don't, it's hard for them because, especially in our community, we put so much trust and faith in our spiritual leaders, you know, and we know that just historically, that's just where we come from. And so when they speak, we do take them and we do believe that they are the voice of God, the oracle of God. And so seeing cracks, you know, and blemishes in their makeup, you know, in just how they carry themselves is sometimes uncomfortable. And we have to accept the reality that they're still human.
Mm. And that is the reality. They are human. Now, the question that I have, and this is for anyone who's listening and watching, who supports the person everyone depends on?
Mm.
And have you personally mistaken leadership for isolation? And does responsibility prevent you from seeking support? So let's talk about the first one. Who supports the person everyone depends on, the strong one?
I think it's important that the strong one has uh, a circle of close knit friends, a strong village, and I say this personally that I don't think that close knit circle has to be like minded individuals. You know, you would assume, and I'm speaking from my own life, that you know everybody is devout Christians. That's what makes them close knit. But I think those who are of sound mind and who know you well enough and love you enough to support you, not only support you, but to tell you what you probably don't want to hear. Those are the people that should be supporting the strong person. That is the person. Those are the people that you should be able to depend on. That you
Yeah.
can be your complete. The best conversations and the best relationships I have, and I describe it this way: I can lay bare before them and not feel ashamed.
Mm.
Who are the people that you can be yourself around, your complete self, flaws and all, unashamed?
And that information could be coming from anywhere, not necessarily from a like-minded person.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, being the strong one is not always the best thing.
Mm.
We need
Yeah,
to go ahead. Mhm.
can I say this? You know, you said I've been having this conversation a lot lately, so because I've learned in this past year or so, that we often think being a strong one that we just happened upon us. But I think when we talked about normalizing, right? I think we start to normalize that I'm the one that people come to for answers. I'm the one, and when we do that, we put ourselves in a pretty, you know, rocky, dangerous position. Because what I've learned is when I hit that rock bottom, when I hit those low moments, because the people are so used to seeing me as the guidance or the counselor or whatever role I've played. When I went to them and just shared, when someone asks you how you doing, I'm like, and you start to tell them how you're doing, I learned they looked so uncomfortable because they. And I remember one person said to me, "I don't want you to think I'm not listening to you, Juan, but I'm not used to you talking like this. I don't know what to say to you.
Mm.
I love you, but I'm not used to this, so I'm uncomfortable." And I
Mm.
remember thinking like, wow, it was honesty, right? It was honesty, but they and you could see it on their face. They look so uncomfortable because they're like, I'm used to leaning on you. Now you're trying to lean on me, and I'm not used to that. I don't know what to do with this.
Mm. So I think in our conversation, we're pointing to what we believe is that if loneliness is the problem, then connection must be part of the solution.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And which brings us to brotherhood. Brotherhood.
Yeah,
So let me post a question in here because I think this is important as well. Yeah. How important is brotherhood in overcoming loneliness? And again, let me lead off by saying that it is essential. And for me, brotherhood creates that space where we can be honest
mm-hmm.
and share, not
Yes,
perform, not compete, not impress, but be real. And assuming that we're talking about strong men, and we are, strong men need strong men around them.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily because they're weak or perceived as weak, but because they're human, right? Every man needs people who know more than his successes
Yes,
and more than his successes,
that's good.
right? And that's what you're talking about. People know who know his struggles, right? We often we're caught up and all they know about us is our titles, what we did yesterday, how good we are. No, we need people around us who understand and know us during our hard, tough days, our struggles. Very important, I believe, right? You
Yes.
know, what our disappointments, the things that we fear most. So you see, Dr. Juan, if I don't share my dreams with you, if I don't share my wants with you, what I would like to achieve with you, where does that leave us? How can you support me?
Right. Right.
You support me, right? Again,
Yeah.
with this talk, accountability, right? And encouragement and support. Those are not things that happen in isolation. There's a thing out there that, oh, don't tell people about your ideas. Don't share those things. How else can they grow? Can you support me if I don't share them with you?
Yeah. If you don't, yeah.
Now, let me ask you, Dr. One, how has brotherhood impacted your life and leadership?
I think it has had a tremendous impact in a positive way on my leadership. There are things that, and I talk about this often, but growing up and having the inconsistency of affirmations from my natural father, my biological father, I found that I learned about leadership. I learned about manhood. A lot of times from my best friends,
Mhm.
from the guys that I was around, them and their fathers. So being around these my peers and being around their dads and just male figures who came along and built relationships and developed some level of trust and rapport with me, I learned these things. So having that circle of brotherhood really helped me out, because even if we were, walking through some similar seasons and think changes in life, we were able to sit down and discuss them openly and candidly with each other, and then help each other figure out what those steps look like to get to where we're trying to get to or get away from. So it's had a tremendous positive impact on my leadership and growth and development as a man.
Mm. Now, we learn from each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we learn through our mistakes, through the things that we do well, and who better to learn from than the people you spend most of your
Mm,
time with? I
yeah.
think that's what you're talking about there. All right, so here's some questions for reflection. Who can you call when life becomes heavy? We ought to have a list, right? Not
Hmm.
one or two. So if we are lacking in that area, that's an area we need to all work on, right? Who can you call when life becomes heavy? Do you have brothers or merely acquaintances?
Mm.
Mm. Are you intentionally building meaningful relationships? And so I'd like you to address the last one. Are you intentionally building meaningful relationships?
I would have to say yes. And I will be honest, when I think about that, growing up, I would say, young adulthood, I wasn't the best at initiating conversations and initiating relationships or trying to build with men. It was very uncomfortable for me. I now if they walked up to me or we just ended up in the same group and were kind of pushed to have start conversation and built it from there, that was easy. I was open to that, but to be surrounded or be around in the company of men and then have to put myself out there, to engage, right, and build. That's not something that I was developed in. I was underdeveloped in that area until recently, in the past several years. And so now I would say yes. Yes, I do intentionally build meaningful relationships with brothers.
Mhm. So, we said earlier in the previous segment that if loneliness is a problem, then connection is a solution.
Uh-huh.
So, assuming that connection is the answer, then here's the final question. And it, I believe, is a real practical question. How do men actually build connection?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
How do men actually build connection, right? So, what practical steps can men take to overcome loneliness and build meaningful connection? And we talk about almost everything these days. The first thing people say is intentionality, right?
Yeah.
And that's because things, good things rarely happen in your life by accident. And the same is true for connection. Connection rarely happens accidentally.
Yeah.
So this is what we do. We got to reach out to people.
Yeah.
We got to make that phone call, even when we don't want to make the call.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
We
Yes.
gotta
Yes.
and these seem so simple, but you got
Mhm.
to schedule time with your friends, with people who you want to build that relationship with. Make build a lunch date, right? And there are people in your life that too often we forget. We forget them. People who served you well in the past.
Yeah.
Reconnect with them. Reconnect with old friends.
Yeah.
And join communities like we have here, Bridging Generations. This is a community.
Yeah.
Of men, a collision with purpose, global humanity network. Join these communities. That is another way to build connection. And once you have these connections, you start to build them, invest in them.
Yeah.
You don't, relationships are not going to build themselves. You have to invest in them and do so before you're in dire need of them, before you desperately need them. Build them before you need them, right? And perhaps the most important thing you can do to intentionally build connection is to give yourself permission to be known,
Oh, yes.
to be known. And it doesn't have to be something perfect or complete. What must exist is honesty, because real intentional connection begins with authenticity.
Yeah.
That's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
With authenticity. So, of course, Dr. Juan, my question to you, sir, is what practical advice will you give men who are struggling with loneliness today? And there are many, 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 many men out there who are struggling.
I would say much like what you just said, Doc. Real quickly, I think it starts with being honest. I think honesty is the first step. You can't address what you're unwilling to acknowledge. You know. Secondly, you said it. I think you got to be intentional. Like brotherhood doesn't just happen by accident. You gotta. You said it. Join a group. Go to breakfast. Take a trip. Schedule a call. Accept those invitations, get at the house, go, engage, interact, and I think you got to stop waiting on others to initiate. I said that, it doesn't always come to you. Sometimes, you'll normalize loneliness if you don't take the step to go and initiate, the engagement. You be the one to make the first move. And I think finally, be the kind of friend or the kind of brother or support system you're hoping to find.
Mm,
Healthy relationships are reciprocal. So what you're looking for, work on being that very thing that you're looking for.
mm. Model the behavior is what I hear you
Yeah.
saying. Yeah. All right. So great advice. Very practical advice, I should say. All right. So for our listeners, What relationship do you need to invest in?
Mm.
Hmm. What? Who do you need to call this week? That's a big one. Who do you need to call this week?
Yeah.
Hmm? Yeah, who, you need to pick up the phone. You need to call someone, and you need to create a list. And what step can you take toward connection today? So, Doc, talk a little bit about what relationship do you need to invest in?
I would say first it's that relationship with self. When I think about that, I think about, because I'm always thinking about treat others how you want to be treated and love thy neighbor as thyself. But if you aren't caring for self properly, right? If you're not loving self, if you're not looking out and even aware of what self needs, you can't do that for somebody else. So I would say that first investment should be in self. But secondly, also like there are and we got to be careful to not create or even perpetuate the illusion that we are alone and no one has our back. There are people around us, brothers around us who are waiting on us. They tried to come and you somehow pushed them off. They were afraid to approach you, or you were going through something and they didn't want to further agitate you, but they've been there. They're just waiting for you to say, "Hey, I'm here. Hey, let's get together." So I think those relationships with those you hold dear and who hold you dear, I think those are the ones you should invest in because they know you well and they're gonna hold you down 100% every time. But you gotta stop waiting for them to initiate it.
And you said something so powerful. Stop saying that you are alone. It's just
Yeah,
you and the world, or it's just
yeah,
you and your family, because that is not the world. That is
yes,
not your ecosystem.
yes.
That- and if
Ecosystem. I
it is,
like that.
and if it is, it's not a healthy one.
Yeah,
It is not a healthy one. So go out there, make the call, reach out, connect intentionally, know which relationship you should invest in, and call someone today, tonight. Call that person and get back to those people who you thought are no good to you
yeah,
because they are of the past. There's some value in the past as well.
yeah.
Some of those people will bring that value back. All right, so here's our quick fire segment. We're coming down on the hour, and Doc, quick fire, no thinking, just truth. Brotherhood or independence?
Brotherhood.
I say brotherhood too.
Hmm.
Vulnerability or silence?
Vulnerability.
Now, there's still many of us are afraid of vulnerability.
Oh yeah. Well, see, here's the thing. Real quickly, to choose to be vulnerable is a decision. It's a choice, and then sometimes it's a risk at the same time. You have to choose to be
How can
vulnerable.
those people out there know that I'm not working, things are not working? It's a weakness here. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Not easy
Hmm.
to do, is it?
Not at all.
But
Not at
but
all.
it's a must. We must learn how to do it, right? All right, connection or isolation.
Connection.
And here's a big, big one: pride or honesty.
Honesty. Honesty all day.
All day long, all day long. You know. All right, so let's get to our final question. And I'm going to post this because this is such a big deal. Let me post it before we talk about it. If everyone around you disappeared tomorrow, who would you miss? And who would genuinely miss the real you? It's a different way to ask the question, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Everyone around you disappeared tomorrow. Who would you miss? And who would genuinely miss the real you? That's a big question. That's a
That's
big,
very thought provoking.
yeah. And maybe we need to just leave it as a thought. Mm.
Yeah. Let it marinate.
Yes, maybe we need to just leave it out there. If everyone around you disappeared tomorrow, who would you miss? And who would genuinely miss the real you? I'm thinking, I'm processing,
Yeah.
I'm processing. All right, Doc, we're coming down on the hour. All right, so before we go into our closing monologue, as they call it, what you got going on this weekend?
This weekend,
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm being the writing studio. That's what I call it now. I'm being a writing studio,
Mm-hmm.
working on a major project. Actually, two. So, I'm working on, of course, my memoirs, but at the same time, I'm building a plan and a logic model for ACWP Ministries, a
Mm-hmm.
Collision with Purpose Ministries. So, yeah, I'll be in the studio, the writing studio, this weekend.
Okay, so let me ask you a few questions about the Collision with Purpose ministry. And the most important question is, when do you expect that it will be launched officially?
Whew, I would say, well, I'm gonna be honest. I would uh because me, I like things to be right, and not necessarily the right time, but just right and ready. I would want to say by the end of the summer, if not mid-July, the end of the summer, just to kick it off, launch and everything, get everything going, and everything starts. I think that would be a good time.
So mid July.
Hmm.
So let's see, we're June. Today's what, the 11th or the 12th or something like that. Today's what?
The
We
11th, yes, June 11th.
so we have almost a little bit more than a month to go.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, that sounds great. We need to get this thing up and running because there's such a need for it, and it's going to make such a huge difference
I
in the lives
agree.
of many. So we don't want to delay it. We don't want to delay it longer than we need to. All right. So, Dr. One, tonight we talked about loneliness, and I want to differentiate between loneliness and weakness. Two
Hmm.
different things, right? And we talk about loneliness as reality. I mean, you can be strong and still need people. You can still lead and need support. And that I want all you leaders out there to understand that. You can still be that leader, that
Yeah. Yeah.
leader, and still seek support, right? You can carry responsibility and still need connection. In fact, it will serve you well, right? And why is that so? Because strength was never meant to be found or seen in isolation. And we touched on brotherhood, and it's not something that is optional, it's mandatory. We need that. We need brotherhood. So tonight, I want to leave this with every man. I want to leave this question with every male out there, every man who truly, first question is, who truly knows who you are? And I'm not talking about what you do, I'm not talking about what you provide, not the image you project, but you, Dr. Juan.
Whew. This has been a good conversation. It's been a good conversation. I'm with you on that, leaving things to think about. Loneliness is not a sign that you're weak. I love how you said that. But it's often a signal that you were created for connection. That's what we miss when you were asking earlier, what are the signs that we ignore? I think we miss that loneliness is not a sign of weakness, but it's a signal that you were created for connection. Tonight,
Mm.
we talked about the reality that many men are surrounded by people yet still feel unseen. We discussed how responsibility, leadership, pressure, and expectations can cause men to suffer in silence too often. We explored the importance of brotherhood and the need for trusted relationships where men can be honest, challenged, supported, and encouraged. But perhaps the most important takeaway in this, well, how I feel, is that you do not have to carry everything alone.
Mm.
There is strength in reaching out, there is courage in being honest, and there is wisdom in allowing others to walk alongside you. One of my favorite scriptures is 3 John 1:2, chapter 1, verse 2. It says this, "Beloved, I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers." And so simply put, I believe God desires for us to be healthy and whole in every area of our lives, not just financially, not just professionally, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and relationally as well. The challenge that we find is that many men focus on succeeding outwardly while suffering inwardly. So, but true prosperity is when the man on the inside is doing just as well as the man that everyone else sees on the outside. So if you're listening to this tonight and you've been carrying the weight by yourself, let this be the moment you take a step toward connection. You heard Doc talk about it. Take a step towards connection. Make the call, he said. Send the text. He said, join the group. Start the conversation. Don't wait for them to initiate it. Because healing often comes when isolation ends. Connection is not something we find, it's something that we build. And remember, your value is not found in what you produce, provide, or accomplish. Your value is found in who you are. As always, we thank you for tuning in to Bridging Generations, Voices of Men. We appreciate your support, your engagement, and your willingness to be a part of this meaningful conversation week after week. Join us every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we continue bridging generations, sharing wisdom, and empowering men to become their best selves. Until next time, be blessed, stay encouraged, and live out loud. Peace.
This is not just a show. This is a shift. A reset of how men think, how men heal, and how men lead. Before behavior, there is belief. Before legacy, there is mindset. And before change reaches generations, it must first reach the mind. This is Bridging Generations. Yeah. We were raised on survival, not reflection. Taught strength, but not emotional protection. Passed down rules, never passed down tools. So we repeated cycles, thinking pain was the fuel. Different decades, same mental wars. Men grinding hard, but still unsure. We inherited limits, disguised as truth, and called them manhood. Handed down to the youth. But growth don't start with doing more. It starts with thinking different than before.